Alright, I know I don't do too much basketball content no more, but I just had to talk about this topic. Playoffs being great so far, Halliburton doing Halliburton things, Jalen Brunson being clutch as usual, Shea cooking up. There's been one story going under the radar. Well, not really under the radar, but it hasn't been spoken about too much. Rightfully so, the playoffs are still going. Who would talk about a team that's not in the playoffs? But a storyline I want to discuss today, there's a good possibility the Spurs might take over the league in Wemby's third year. With the black cloud looming around Milwaukee, there's a high possibility that he gets traded this offseason. I mean, with Dame's injury, Kyle Kuzma looking like a bum, Brook Lopez regressing and his contract expiring, the Bucks aren't really in a position to compete next year, especially with the Dame injury. His and Giannis' Supermax contract holding up the books, preventing the roster even from making any significant moves in the offseason. So the only option is to trade Giannis. Now you may say, well, it's not a certainty that he gets traded to the Spurs. Well, looking around the league, I know the Bucks GMs did say he's going to gut the roster, which I don't think is plausible because I don't think the Bucks really have too much leverage in negotiations. Yes, you were trading a top 3 player in the league, but what's the alternative to you not trading him? You don't have any flexibility in your roster, or you have very little flexibility in your roster, so you're not going to try to compete, or you don't have the facilities to try to compete. Your only option is to trade Giannis or just waste his career away. So if a team says, I'll give you this and this and this, but I'm not giving you this, the only real negotiating power is to go search around the league and find probably a worse deal than what was already on the table. I say that, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Bucks ownership and GM decide, I'm not really liking these trade offers. We're not going to trade Giannis. We're just going to let it ride out, try to make some small moves and hope that it works out for the best. Giannis already delivered us a championship, so it's not no real urgency for the ownership to move Giannis. It's just in the best interest for their future to move Giannis, which ownership probably couldn't care about. They already got their championship. They got their franchise guy. He gonna sell jerseys, put butts in seats. That's probably all they want. Looking around the league, even with the idea of him gutting rosters, there's 0 teams in the NBA that can match the Spurs' package. Who you gonna look to? The Rockets? I know they said they were willing to trade Şengün, but you're gonna have to move Dylan Brooks. And outside of throwing Amin Thompson in the deal, their trade package is not really competing with ours. I know they made a big deal about the Rockets having good draft capital, but that draft capital is only good to the Suns, being that it's their picks. Outside of their value to the Suns, their draft capital isn't really good enough to write home about, so they're going to trade Giannis to the Rockets for Şengün's kind of worthless picks or some lower value pick. Dylan Brooks and whatever you can pry from the Rockets. No, that's a decline trade. You look over to OKC where you can say, oh, they got 1 million picks. They can just throw in Chet. Well, outside of Chet absolutely forgetting how to play basketball, there is zero possibility that they trade a Chet for Giannis. So that's out the window. Brooklyn, Dallas, Washington, Golden State, Miami. Come on now. None of those teams have anything close enough to even be in a conversation for trading for Giannis. Cleveland, I know I did see that trade package for that somebody, I can't remember who did it, but they brought up Evan Mobley for Giannis. And yes, you get a young star if you do that trade, but that's it. You get Evan Mobley. You don't have any of your first round picks. Evan Mobley offensively is not good enough yet to carry that offense, just like Giannis attempted to carry that roster with Dame only being limited to 55 games. They were a 6 seed. So he's telling me Evan Mobley without Dame be able to lead the Bucks to the playoffs? No. So that trade package is dead because if they miss the playoffs, they don't even have their own pick. So they wouldn't benefit at all for being bad. So that just makes no sense. Even on Cleveland side, yes, you upgrade offensively with Giannis, kinda. Because good thing about Mobley and why the Cavs were able to run the double bigs, it's because Mobley's ability to space the floor. I know Giannis has took strides in his mid-range shooting. He's still not the shooter that Evan Mobley is from 3. And you don't really want Giannis to settle for mid-ranges. I know he shot great efficiency this year on great volume, but I'm saying Giannis' main strength is getting to the rim. And you can't really do that with Jarrett Allen also not providing any floor spacing. So you got 2 non-floor fixtures on your starting 5 with Giannis. It just will allow the defense to collapse way easier and guard Giannis way easier. So even if you do get Giannis, unless you on the move with Jared Allen, which I don't know you really get any value from Jared Allen. Not many teams really need a starting center, especially not any teams that can trade back a 4 or a 5 that can provide spacing for Giannis. They don't really need a center. Doesn't really make sense for either of the teams, and that only leaves you with really one option. The only real, or who I perceive, the only real legitimate trade partner for the Bucks that actually makes sense being my San Antonio Spurs. Not just because I'm biased, but just looking at our trade packet or the trade package that we're able to throw at the Bucks, is we're clearly far and above outside of OKC trading Chet and their treasure trove of pick, which is close to impossible to happening. We're the best. And I would say this right here, maybe it's a hot take, but I don't believe we should trade Castle to that trade packet. I believe he's just as untouchable as Wemby. And even without Castle, I still say we have the best. Presumably the 2nd overall pick, Dylan Harper. The 14th overall pick, it may not be as big as OKC, but we do also have a treasure trove of first round picks we could throw at the Bucks. We have a Keldon Johnson, a Devin Vassell, a Jeremy Sohan, who are under 26. They can be great young building blocks for the Bucks, on top of the Dylan Harper and the 14th overall pick, which would give the Bucks a great foundation. And we even could facilitate a 3-teamer where we can help the Bucks get their own pick for next year. I believe that trade package, even without Castle, is far better than any of the other trades around the league by far. You get the young building block in a Dylan Harper or whoever you decide to take at the 2nd overall pick. You get 3 good foundational pieces with room to grow, and they're not going to be all-stars like I just said before, but they are depth pieces or pieces that you can build their value up. Keldon Johnson is the oldest out of the 3, and he's probably turning 26 next year, so he hasn't reached his ceiling. Jeremy Sohan just is still 22, 23, so who knows what he can become with the proper development, with no pressure of actually competing next year. Letting him build out his game. I know we started that process, but giving him some more time to build out his game and develop next to a Dylan Harper. And you still have the 14th overall pick. You can do a couple of things with that. One, find a Brook Lopez replacement for the future pick, or you can take a flyer on a high upside guy. You already got your solidified pick with the number 2 selection, presumably Dylan Harper. Why not try another upside guy and maybe you get lucky again? You could be bad for one more year, you're not going to be the worst team in the league, but being the worst team in the league doesn't guarantee you the first overall pick, as we've seen this year, as we've seen last year. So you have a Dylan Harper, you have your pieces, you have the pick for next year. Presumably you can orchestrate a trade with the Pelicans, which would give you a chance to have a shot at the number 1 pick while still having some foundation. So even if you don't get the pick, say you end up like a Utah Jazz, Washington Wizards of this year, where you're the worst team, but you end up with the 4th or 5th overall pick. I know I'm not too familiar with the draft, but I do know next year's class is also deemed to be a pretty good class. You get another piece like that. You add that to the Harper, Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Sohan, whoever you take at 14, if you keep the 14th pick, and you just have the future like that. You not kind of like the Indiana Pacers route, with just making solid moves here and there and not just balling them out, because balling them out does not guarantee you. I mean, look at the Hornets, look at the Wizards, look at the Utah Jazz, who have been horrible since I don't know when, and they still haven't gotten nowhere, and they still don't have a franchise piece. They still don't have a direction. Balling them out doesn't necessarily guarantee you a good future. And on the Spurs end, whether they include Castle in the trade or they don't include Castle in the trade, one thing is pretty obvious: they're instant contenders. Including Castle in the trade, you will have a Giannis, Fox, and Wemby starting big three, when you're only playing 2 of those big 3, so you're gonna have a good amount of financial flexibility. I think the only other player that would be on the payroll at that point would be Harrison Barnes, making $18 million, which is a really movable contract. And if you decide not to move it, Harrison Barnes can slide in very well at that 3 spot next to Giannis and Wemby and Fox with his 3-point shooting. And I know he's not a lockdown defender, but he is a positive perimeter defender. And I wouldn't go as far as to call them the instant favorites, because that OKC team is looking like the KD Warriors, but they would definitely be a top 3 contender in the West. And depending on their roster, especially if they can keep Castle in that deal and make some good quality moves, they would be my favorites to over OKC. 2 top 10 players with a good supporting cast. Sound like the 2020 Lakers to me. But other than that, leave a comment what you guys think of my trade proposal, or let me comment on some trade ideas you had that I didn't bring up, some teams that have a dark horse chance of getting on it. But other than that, hit that subscribe button and have a blessed one.